Ah, darlings. Perfect timing. Come. I have a very interesting one for you tonight. This one is called Into the Mocking Mire by Brian Scharf. Ulad could not stop the shaking anymore. The freezing mud stuck to his bare feet, making them numb and spreading the chill through the rest of his body. Fog rolled thick and swirling between the gnarled, twisted trees. He could no longer hear the dogs barking in the swamp behind him, though he knew that did not mean they had given up the hunt. The collar chafed his neck, sending a fresh warm trickle of blood down the back of his neck that chilled almost instantly. Ulad could not stop moving. If they found him, he would be taken back, and his master would find a much worse death for him than frost. Either he was free, or he was dead. Either way, he was not going back. The resurging sound of barks and howls urged him forward as the swamp fought to keep him pinned. The flickering of torchlight stretched the shadows of the trees into horrific visions of twisted bodies, their branches long and reaching, clinging to the tattered remains of his clothes. Slowly, far too slowly, he lunged forward, one step after the other, until his foot was wrenched back, sending Ulad tumbling face first into the icy muck. A cackling laughter filled the air. Ulad winced, expecting the fall of the lash to strike his back, but froze, realizing it was not the harsh laughter of his master catching up with him, but the braying laughter of something else, something that did not sound human. Another voice joined, then another, and another, until a sound of horrid laughter echoed endlessly in his ears. He clamped his arms against his head, trying desperately to block out the sound, but to no avail. Trying desperately to get away, Ulad tore his leg free of the bramble of thorns that encased it, his blood mixing with the mud already coating his skin, and with a newfound fervor, he ran. Ulad did not know for how long he ran, but the torchlight had faded to nothing in the distance, before the laughing quieted. Fighting for each of his ragged breaths, Ulad tried to get his bearings, but could not make head or tails of the world around him. The sky was black as pitch, with no moon or stars to guide him, and each skeletal tree looked identical to the next in the gloom. As Ulad grew more lost, and his limbs grew number, he began to lose hope. Then, a flickering light appeared in the darkness. Not a torch, but a campfire. Perhaps a sanctuary in this awful place? Ulad had no choice. He could feel his body giving out on him. The cold, the exhaustion, was all he could do to still stand. He walked towards the fire, hoping that this would be the hearth of salvation rather than the fires of hell. Stumbling into the camp, he found a pair of bedrolls on either side of a merry fire. Upon seeing no one around, Ulad knelt close and let the heat wash over him, savoring every flickering ember. He breathed out a soft gasp of pleasure as he felt the tingling return of feeling to his extremities. A moment later, he felt the comfort and peace that had so long eluded him. Then, the sharp pain across his back as the whip cracked in the night. He cried out in pain and fear, feeling his shirt and skin rip open from the strike. The mud was drier here by the fire, causing a hard surface of caked dirt and bramble to form where he had fallen. The taste of iron filled his mouth as his face slammed into the exposed root. Little moth, won't you come home?" a cruel voice called out in the night. Another crack of the whip preceded the sharp burning pain across the back of Ulad's legs. "Wouldn't want to whip you the way you were, all cold and numb. Never feel the pain that way now, would you?" Laughter echoed through the trees, and Ulad felt his blood run cold. The monsters and his master both. Surely he was going to die. The whip cracked again. Laughing at me, eh? I'll teach you respect. The laughter grew louder. The whip cracked again. The laughter grew louder. I'll teach you obedience. The whip cracked again. The laughter grew louder. I'll teach you your place, boy. Silence fell. Ulad shook violently from the pain, the fear, the cold, but his curiosity got the better of him. Slowly, he rolled onto his torn and bleeding back, savoring the cold mud soothing his wounds, though not his fears. His master stood before him, still, his eyes wide with terror. Glittering in the dark next to them shone another pair of wild eyes, glittering in the firelight. Around his master's throat was a dark, deformed hand squeezing tight. The glittering eyes looked into Ulad's own, and the moment stretched on. Ulad's stomach twisted and heaved. His breath caught in his throat, and then he finally breathed out a low, stuttering sound. Ulad laughed. He laughed and laughed, mania filling his voice, filling his heart. The voices that had chased him through the mire joined him, but his fear of them was gone. Together they laughed and laughed. His master's eyes grew more fearful, only causing Ulad to laugh harder still, so much so that he could barely breathe anymore. Days later, on the edge of the mire, a young farmhand was tending to the edges of his father's field, when a strange noise caught his attention. Fearful that there was some danger nearby, he ran off to call his father. The two returned to the spot where the boy had heard the sound, and his father took the lead, bow in hand. They stalked through the long grass until they found themselves ankle-deep in the muck overlooking the swamp. There, caked in mud and sitting on a log, a young boy sat with his back to them. He was drumming, it seemed, a slow, steady beat, so dull that it could barely be heard over the soft sound of his giggling. "Ho there!" the farmer called, but received no response. Knocking an arrow, the farmer moved closer and called again. "Ho there! Do you need help?" Slowly, the boy turned, his eyes glittering with madness. His laughter swelled into a full cackle as the farmer stared in horror at the mutilated head sitting in his lap. The boy drove his stick down into the head over and over, keeping up his rhythm. Fear flooding him, the farmer raised the bow and let his arrow fly, taking the boy in the heart. He fell back into the mud, coughing up blood, with his last breath still cackling madly. The farmer moved forward, cautiously, checking to see if his work was done. Lying dead on the ground was the young boy, collar around his neck, eyes wide and clouded, and face stretched into a wide, deranged smile. "Another claimed by the mire," the farmer muttered. "Surely the gods are mocking us." And that, my darlings, is the Mocking Mire. Happy Halloween.